for economic growth that will be led by the energy sector. Clause 17 amends the Environment Act to clarify the scope and coverage of environment protection fee relating to an enterprise engaged in stone crushing or the processing of aggregates, rock sand or basalt sand to avoid double payment of the environment protection fee. It also allows for the increase of fines or offenses relating to illegal dumping of waste and other materials, littering the public places and natural sites, non-compliance with an ISO abatement notice, and the unauthorized display of posters or defacement of designated sites. This amendment, Madam Speaker, strengthens environmental sustainability by reinforcing deterrence against activities that harm our natural environment. Clause 18 amends the Financial Intelligence and Anti-Money Laundering Act to expand the definition of credit unions to include societies under the Cooperatives Act, which provide financial services to the members. The amendment also removes the limitation on the power of the Financial Services Commission to sanction financial institutions for non-compliance with the AML-CFT requirements. The same amendment excludes low-risk third-party administrators from the AML-CFT obligations. Clause 19 amends the Financial Reporting Act to introduce sustainability reporting standards and provide for the enforcement by the Financial Reporting Council. Clause 20 amends the Financial Services Act to establish a National FinTech Governance Committee, strengthen the FSC's supervisory and enforcement powers, including conservatorship and advertising controls, and introduce a private wealth management license. Together, Madam Speaker, clauses 18 to 20 strengthen Mauritius' reputation as a clean, transparent, and forward-looking financial sector. Clause 21 amends the Food and Agricultural Research and Extension Institute Act, first to introduce definitions of food security and national food security strategy, two, to broaden the objectives of the Food and Agricultural Research and Extension Institute by designating it as a national authority responsible for planning, coordinating, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating food security programs, and for leading the implementation of national food security, food sovereignty, and food self-sufficiency targets. Third, preparation of annual food security reports. And fourth, to empower FARI to establish interinstitutional committees, require relevant ministries, institutions, and agencies to submit information required to monitor food security targets, to appoint food security experts on a contractual basis, and to facilitate public-private ventures and contract farming. Clause 22 amends the Foundations Act to clarify which charitable foundations are subject to AML-CFT inspections and to require dates of birth in beneficial ownership registers. Clause 23 amends the Freeport Act to remove the prescribed time limit on private freeport developers for warehousing authorization. Clause 24 amends the Higher Education Act to strengthen quality assurance, including for micro-credentials and foundation programs, and to clarify the role and funding functions of the Higher Education Commission. Clause 25 amends the Immigration Act to modernize occupational permits, align with ADB reforms, introduce prescribed fees and documentation for spouses, and establish a digital travel authorization regime. This amendment, Madam Speaker, represents an important step towards a more modern, predictable, and secure immigration framework at a time when demographic growth is negative, with a consequential decline in our labor force. Madam Speaker, importantly, in clause 25, I am removing the discretionary power of the minister to whom the responsibility for the subject of home affairs is assigned. That is, in our case, the Prime Minister himself, to cancel the visa of a non-citizen in the public interest. That discretionary power is being removed completely. As a result, Such decision will henceforth be based on rules rather than on discretion. Clause 726 amends the Industrial Property Act to give effect to the Harare Protocol on ARIPO titles and to align the institutional framework accordingly. Clause 27 amends the International Financial Organizations Act to update references and governance provisions relating to the Bretton Woods and related institutions and to repeal obsolete schedules. Clause 28 amends the Irrigation Authority Act to allow authorized officers to enter specified lands within irrigation areas to verify compliance with land use conditions. Clause 29 amends the Jewelry Act to extend the assay officer's supervisory remit over dealers in precious metals and stones for AML CFT purposes, allow sanctions for non-compliance, and lengthen record-keeping periods. Clause 30 amends the Land Drainage Authority Act to enhance coordination between the Land Drainage Authority and the National Development Unit, provide for fees and charges to be levied, and improve governance on drainage projects. This amendment will facilitate the timely implementation of land drainage projects, strengthen flood mitigation efforts, and provide better protection to families, communities, and businesses affected by recurrent flooding. Clause 31 amends the Law Officers Act to update provisions following institutional changes and to clarify the circumstances in which a law officer and state attorney may appear on behalf of entities in which the state has interest. Clause 32 amends the Limited Liability Partnership Act and Clause 33, the Limited Partnership Act, to extend name reservation periods, raise the turnover threshold for small partnerships, and requires dates of birth in beneficial ownership registers. Clause 34 amends the Mauritius Agricultural Marketing Act to increase applicable fines and imprisonment terms, thereby strengthening enforcement. Clause 35, again, Madam Speaker, it amends the Mauritius Citizenship Act to remove the discretionary powers of the Prime Minister and Minister of Home Affairs to deprive citizenship without reasons and to make the regime more rule-based. This is to address the infamous Hoffman Law, which was passed specifically for one person. Clause 36 amends the Mauritius Institute of Training and Development Act to add a representative of the Ministry of Tourism to the board and increase the quorum. Clause 37 amends the Mauritius Qualifications Authority Act to provide for the registration and deregistration of trainers and to strengthen the national qualifications framework. Clause 38 amends the Mont-Selma Act to remove certain requirements relating to association foncière and green forest and to provide transitional arrangements. Clause 39 repeals the National Environment Cleaning Authority Act to wind up that authority. Thus, only Mori Facilities Management Company Limited will operate in that sector, avoiding duplication and suboptimal use of resources. The detailed transitional provisions for staff assets, liabilities, and acts of NECA are being addressed at Clause 60. Clause 40 amends the National Land Transport Authority Act to review the licensing board's framework, introduce structured procedures and rights of appeal for license applications, and reinforce conflict of interest rules. Clause 41 amends the Non-Citizens Employment Restriction Act to create a student employment permit regime with associated procedures, offenses, and penalties for foreign students and employers who fail to comply with the new requirements. Clause 42 amends the Ports Act to require the Director of Shipping to verify vessels' compliance certificates before granting inwards clearance, thereby enhancing maritime safety and environmental protection. Clause 43 amends the Private Health Institutions Act to introduce a formal application and approval in principle process for the new or expanded private health institutions. Clause 44 amends the Private Pension Scheme to provide that abandoned entitlements are transferred to the curator of vacant estates. Clause 45 amends the Public Health Act to introduce fixed penalty notices for unlawful waste disposal and storage that create public health risk. Clause 46 amends the Public Holidays Act so that when a public holiday falls on a Sunday, the following Monday is also a public holiday. Clause 47 amends the Public Procurement Act to allow direct procurement of specialized services from diaspora members under prescribed conditions. This will facilitate great engagement of the Mauritian diaspora and leveraging their expertise and international experience for national development. Clause 48 amends the Road Traffic Act to establish a traffic management and road safety unit, modernize vehicle registration procedures, expand regulation, making powers, and penalize excessive noise from altered silencers. Clause 49 amends the Small Farmers Welfare Fund Act to clarify key definitions and to increase the maximum number of cattle from 40 to 50 to qualify for support from the Small Farmers Welfare Fund. Clause 50 amends the Sugar Industry Efficiency Act to abolish the land conversion exception following the discontinuation of the integrated modern agricultural morsel scheme. Clause 51 amends the Tourism Authority Act to regulate outdoor accommodation and motorized water sports, harmonize alcohol limits with what is prescribed under the Road Traffic Act, and enhance safety on pleasure crafts. Clause 52 amends the Trust Fund for Specialized Medical Care Act to broaden its functions and to perform the duties conferred to it under the Clinical Trials Act. Clause 53 amends the United Nations Financial Prohibitions, Arms Embargo, and Travel Ban sections, that is the Sanctions Act, to improve the functioning of the National Sanctions Committee and clarify procedures and third-party rights in relation to freezing and prohibition orders. Clause 54 amends the Variable Capital Companies Act to allow protected cell companies to convert into variable capital companies with legal continuity. The amendment allows a protected cell company to be converted into a variable capital company, thereby providing greater flexibility for investment structures, facilitating businesses, and ensuring in continuity of existing legal rights, obligations, and operations during the conversion process. That is for the whole restructuring of the business. Clause 55 amends the Veterinary Council Act to revise the quorum requirement. Clause 56 amends the Virtual Asset and Initial Token Offering Services Act to tighten governance of virtual asset service providers, to prohibit unlicensed solicitation, and allow tax authorities to assess crypto asset information. Clause 57 amends the Waqf Act to ensure compliance with the Mauritius AML CFT CPF framework. Clause 58 amends the Waste Management and Resource Recovery Act to redefine the definition of waste carrier, strengthen licensing and registration for waste transport and importation, and clarify responsibilities. Clause 59 amends the workers' right to introduce paid menstrual leave, extend maternity leave to 6 months, with, of course, an additional option, as we said, for another 6 months on half pay, and lengthen paternity leave. Finally, Madam Speaker, Clause 28 of the Finance Bill 2026 and Clause 61 under the Economic and Financial Measures, that is the Miscellaneous Provisions Bill, provide for the commencement of the various amendments under this bill, either on specified dates or by proclamation or on publication in the Government Gazette. Madam Speaker, an amendment will be made to Clause 61, Subclause 2 and Subclause 7 of the Economic and Financial Measures Miscellaneous Provisions Bill at committee stage to provide for the measure on the extension of the maternity leave and the paternity leave to be effective as from the 1st of January 2027 instead of the 1st of July 2026 to allow proper human resource planning. I would like to inform the House, Madam Speaker, that we will come with the required legislative and operational framework for the implementation of the digital e-visa system, parallel imports, and anti-abusing pricing practices. These measures require more time for preparation before implementation. Madam Speaker, to conclude, as I bring this second reading speech to a close, and reaffirm the unwavering commitment of this government to the vision set out in Budget 2026-2027. These bills give legislative effect to the reforms that are guided by the four principles that define our approach to nation building. That is responsabilité, solidarité, efficacité économique et justice sociale. They are more than a collection of legislative amendments. Together, they provide the legal framework to restore fiscal sustainability, strengthen our institutions, modernize our economy, reinforce our social contract, and prepare Mauritius for the challenges of an increasingly uncertain world. The future, Madam Speaker, cannot be secured by postponing difficult decisions. It is built by having the courage to act today. Fiscal consolidation is not an end in itself. It is the means by which we restore the strength of the state, preserve confidence in our public financiers, and ensure that future generations inherit a country that is resilient, competitive, and able to protect the most vulnerable. As I said in the budget speech, the future depends on what we do in the present. These bills translate that conviction into action. They lay the foundation of a future-ready Mauritius. That is one that is fiscally responsible, economically stronger, socially fairer, and better equipped to seize the opportunities of tomorrow. The reforms, Madam Speaker, which are before this House, demand courage and perseverance. But they are reforms that are taken not for the next election, but for the next generations. With the confidence in our people and faith in our country's future, this government will continue to take the decisions that are necessary to secure lasting prosperity for all Mauritians. Madam Speaker, with these words, I now commend the bill to the House.
Thank you. Seconded by the Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you, Prime Minister. I have an announcement. Honourable members, now that the Prime Minister has made his speech on the second reading of both bills before the House, I have an announcement to make because I have taken time to ponder on the rules that concern such an important debate. The measures in the bills were already in the annex to the budget speech provided to members. Those measures provide for the implementation of what was already announced. Each bill has what is known as a long title, which describes the object of the bill. For the finance bill, it is to provide for the implementation of measures announced in the budget speech 2026-2027 relating to taxation and national finance and for the matters connected, consequential, and incidental thereto. For the economic and financial measures miscellaneous provisions bill, it is to provide for the implementation of measures announced in the budget speech 2026-2027 relating to economic and financial measures and for the other miscellaneous economic, financial, and related measures. During the ensuing debate, honourable members will be expected to refer to matters which are directly connected to the measures already announced and those which are consequential or incidental thereto only. Standing Order 42.1 clearly stipulates that debate must be relevant to the bill and the amendments brought. Honourable members will not be allowed to debate on policy matters which have already been the subject of full-fledged debates of the appropriation 2026-2027 bills. Honourable members have to restrict their observations to the amendments of the legislation proposed in the two bills being debated and not to the main legislation being amended. Thank you. Yes, Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With your permission, Madam Speaker, I move for the adjournment of the debates.
Thank you. The question... The question is that debate be now adjourned. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Yes?
Madam Speaker, I move for the adjournment of the House to Friday, the 31st of August, 2026 at 3 p.m.
The question is that the House be adjourned to Friday, the 31st of July, 2026. Is there a problem? There's no problem. May I carry on? July, I said. I heard wrong. Okay. I'm going to start again. Prime Minister, you did say Friday, the 31st of July. That is
Speaker.
next Friday.
Next Friday,
Of course.
31st of July
Yes.
at 3 p.m.
Okay. The question is that the House be adjourned to Friday, the 31st of July, 2026 at 3 p.m. Right? Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned.